Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Jean, for appearing. In or around June 17, did you prepare a memorandum to the Prime Minister regarding foreign interference by the Beijing communist regime?
So, a few points. First of all, I've been outside the government for 5 years. I've been out of the PCO for 5 years, so I don't have any access to my records. I don't have any access. Having said that, even if I had, I wouldn't be able to discuss a classified memo. But I don't want to be seen as trying to evade the question. So I will be clear that during my period as National Security Advisors, yes, we briefed the Prime Minister on foreign interference, China and others, because of course it's not only China. And we briefed both in the context of larger conversations on China. We brief in the context of notes that we sent, and of the growing concern that we had, but also some of our allies.
Mr. Jean, through you, Madam Chair, I want to be clear. I'm not asking you to confirm or elaborate upon the contents of any memo. I'm asking very broadly whether a memo had been prepared in June of 2017, or perhaps even if taking your point, if you could more broadly elaborate on how regularly, for example, you would brief the Prime Minister regarding interference activities by the Beijing regime in or around June of 2017 or at that time.
Well, I was in the position for 2 years, from 2016, spring of 2016 to 2018, and we had numerous conversations on China. Some of these China did refer to the subject of foreign interference, and we had notes that we sent to the Prime Minister on that time that spoke about this concern, yes. And we had other intelligence tools, as you know.
And so you had some, among the concerns that you had at that time would have included, for example, Beijing officials pursuing a strategy to infiltrate or interfere with our democratic processes. That would have been a live issue in 2017?
So it's very important to see the threat of foreign interference by a country like China not something as is binary, right? It's not like it's off one day and it's on the next day. It's things that comes over time. During the period that I was in the position, our concerns were a lot more on some of the issues like acquisition of sensitive technology, what we like to refer as economic security, and we took a number of measures that have actually allowed to provide more scrutiny on this. We had other concerns with China. Foreign interference was one of them, but it was not a period where there was signals. Like there's a reason why in 2015 the Department of Foreign Affairs decided to be more direct in putting on notice countries that they should not interfere, but there was not smoking gun. There was just like activities that we just wanted to make sure would not result in any kind of interference.
In 2017, the Beijing regime was the most sophisticated perpetrator of foreign interference activities in Canada. Would you agree with that?
I would say that at that time, we were a lot concerned about Russia as well. And I've just given you a couple of the examples.
I realize that, Mr. Jean, but I asked a specific question.
But definitely, we were more and more concerned about Beijing. And on the subject of foreign interference, we were in particularly watching what was happening in other countries. And you just need to go through open source to see what was happening in Australia in 2017 and what led to them to take a lot of aggressive actions.
And I asked a question, but I want to just build upon it in terms of the frequency of briefings with the Prime Minister. And I know some were oral, there were memos, and so on. But
he doesn't read
just
his
trying
briefs.
to get a better understanding of how often this would happen.
Of course, there are several memos that go from the National Security Advisor to the Prime Ministers in a week. But there's not going to be several on the subject of foreign interference, and certainly not just foreign interference on elections, because I want to be very clear, and if you've heard my remarks, foreign interference concerns in Canada are much broader than elections, and in fact, intimidation and surveillance of diaspora has for some time been a major concern.
Okay. Did the Prime Minister ever instruct you that there are certain topics that are not to be discussed with him?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Prime Minister and his office have always been open to any kind of threats that I wanted to bring.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Jean. Mr. Wernick, in his testimony, spoke about mechanisms in which to declassify information. Would you agree with Mr. Wernick?
I was on my way here during that part of his testimony. But the only thing that I would say, I've given you an example. Actually, I've given you two examples in my presentation. President Obama decided to do it. We can determine whether the timing and the fact it was him doing this made sense following the U.S. election. And when Canada decided to attribute to Russia,
but
sorry,
so Mr. Jean, no. I just want to be clear. Mr. Wernick said there are existing mechanisms to declassify. Would you agree with him, yes or no?
Yes, there are mechanisms.
Okay, thank you.
And in fact, when we decided to attribute, it means that we are declassifying some information.